All right, recording has begun. Okay, and now I go to sharing finale. So let's say I want to be in the key of, that's the wrong finale file. Can you guys see the grand staff, or are you seeing a one-line staff? What are you guys seeing on your screen? You seeing the two lines? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So let's say I say I'm in D and I want to modulate somewhere closely related key. Well, the first thing I have to do is I have to be in D. So you get your key signature, and then you say, what key am I going to? It's got to be one of the 5 closely related keys. So if you're in major, the closely related keys are the relative minor, the dominant and its relative minor, and the subdominant and its relative minor. And if you're in minor, it's the relative major, the subdominant and its relative major, the dominant and its relative major. So those are your 5 keys. So I might want to modulate, say, from the key of A to the key of F sharp minor. Let's say I want to do that. Once I do that, I have to then find out what my common chords are. I'm not going to do F sharp minor because that one's actually too easy. I'm going to do, let's see, if I'm in D, let's do F sharp. Oh, sorry, did I say F sharp minor already? F sharp minor is okay. F sharp minor is the relative minor of A major. So there are 3 sharps in that key. So any chord that has got a G can't be a common chord because it's G sharp in the new key, G natural, the old key. Every other chord's a common chord. So what chords? Well, if I just quickly write my D major chord, I could do this in my head if I wanted to. Their chords are those are my chords. Anything with a G, I can't use. I'll just take them out because the G is going to be sharp in the new key. So I can't use this one. I can't use this one. It's got a G. And I can't use this one. It's got a G. Let's see right there. Those are my common chords. And these 2 are the same. So there's 4 common chords. So all I have to do is write a progression that goes to one of those chords, and it will take me out of there to F sharp minor. So what kind of progression could work? Now I write a progression, and I'll just do it down here. It doesn't matter. So on the key of D, I say I have to start with a 1, and then maybe go to a 6. I don't know, and maybe, whoops, and maybe from there to a 2, and the 2 isn't a common chord, so maybe I'll go from there to a 5, and the 5 chord is the A chord that is a common chord, so the key of F sharp minor, which is now F written like this, F sharp, that's a 3 chord, which could go then to a 6, to a 4, 4 is minor, sorry, 4 to a 5 to a 1. Now that's a very long progression. I just showed you how to do a long one. But basically you find a chord that's in both. So you start at 1, you go to a chord that's in both, and then you go out. Now those are my chords. After I do that, I'm going to want to do it in 4-part harmony. So hopefully you're going to do it with 3 chords. Like I don't need the 6th chord here. And I could have jumped straight from the 3 to say the 5. That's allowed. So I can make it short. And then you just do 4-part harmony. So you know your bass line, and you put it in here. The bass is going to be a D to an E to an A to a C sharp to an F sharp. That's my bass line. Fill in the top. I got 4-part harmony, and I've done a modulation. Those are the steps. I'm going to give you one more step when we finish this, but let's just see if we could do this. So I'd like you to do is not D major, which I just showed you, but I'd like you to go through these steps and go from B flat major to any closely related key using any number or as few chords as you want. But in the end, I want you to show me 4-part harmony. So I want it written in 4-part harmony with good voice league. So if you have a 5-7 chord, the 7 goes downward by step. If you've got a leading tone, it goes up. But just write 4-part harmony, as few chords as you can get away with, but modulate from B flat to any closely related key. And if you do it on computer, we can share it on the screen. If you do it handwritten, photograph it and text it to me so I can share it on the screen. And if you don't want me to share it, send it to me so I can see it, then ask me not to share so I can at least see how you're doing. All right? So this is going to take a little time, but give me the thumbs up, or actually put it in the chat when you're done. That's better because it's permanent. The thumbs up I might miss. I'm going to turn off my sound so you're not disturbed, and go modulate from B flat to a closely related key. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. Daviel?
Yeah. What did you say?
I just said thank you. This is cool.
Oh, you were breaking up.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Oops. Okay, if Davio will give me permission, while you guys are working, let's take a break and see what she did and see what works and doesn't work on it and get some questions, and maybe they'll also offer some inspiration. Is that okay, Davio?
Sure.
Sure, she says, with a little fear and trepidation. Okay, so let me share a new share of the screen. So here's Daviel's. Are we seeing that? We don't want to see it on that version. That's got people's notes on it. Hold on a second. Let me try it again. I've got it on a different format. Let's try this again. Preview. There we go. Okay. So this is Daviel's assignment, and it's a good modulation, but I'm not convinced it's a common chord or pivot chord modulation. So let's all take a look at it. We start in B flat, and we have a B flat major chord. So that's a 1 chord in B flat. We're ending up in C minor, and C minor is 3 flats, B flat is 2 flats, so it's a closely related key. And she's approaching it with a 7/7, which I love. Look at that. The flat goes down. She added and then the leading tone goes up. Beautiful voice leading on the 7/7. So she's going from a 4 to a 7/7 to a 1. That's a great progression in C. So the question is, which is the pivot chord? Which chord exists in both keys? Otherwise, this is what we call chromatic modulation. And you can argue this one either way. This opening chord, the B flat chord, the 1 chord in B flat, is a 7 chord in C, but it's a 7 chord in natural minor. It doesn't function. So you could argue that that's a pivot chord. It's a 7 in C and it's a 1 chord in B flat. But it's hard to do that a little bit. The book doesn't like that because it's a B flat where we hear the 7 normally is a B natural to give us function. So that's one way to look at it. This is a pivot chord, a 1 and a 7. But if we don't like this being a 7, this can't be a pivot chord because it's got an A flat in it already, and B flat doesn't have an A flat. So we'd have to call this one, if this is not a pivot chord, this is a chromatic modulation because the A natural becomes an A flat, and that takes us there. And so the chromatic change is how this modulation works. Either way, it's a perfectly good modulation. But if I had an exam where I asked for a pivot chord, I'm not sure that the pivot chord with the flat 7 is the best pivot chord. So I would have picked a different one. But the modulation works very well, and the voice leading is exceptional. It's beautifully done, beautifully written in 4 parts. You look at that soprano line and the alto line; everything is smooth as glass, with the voices going in the right direction. So 1 is done. Daviel, while we're waiting for the others to get theirs done, do another one. This time start in A minor instead of in B flat major, and do another. And meantime, I'm going to see the other ones as they get done. Are the other 2 getting close? You ready to send me stuff? I can't wait to see it. Leslie, does that thumbs up mean that you're done?
Almost done.
Almost done. Good. So let me know when you're done. I'm glad you're getting close. Excellent. Excellent.
Were you saying we can modulate to any key from B flat?
Any closely related key.
Okay.
So don't go to B natural. You probably could, but don't.
Okay.
Yeah, do common chord modulations, Daviel, if you can, just because I think that's the one we'll get the most use out of, so we need most practice on it. Okay, I'm going to interrupt you guys one more time. I know that Leslie's close, and I don't know where Sophie is, but she may be getting close. But there's something I need to talk about before the class is over, and I want to make sure I remember. We have our next exam is on Wednesday next week, guys, and there's two parts of that exam, and it's got two subjects. It's got these modulations, and it's got the earlier chapter, which I think is secondary dominance. Those two become the exam. We're going to have an in-class exam that's a lot like our homework. So anything you've been doing homework will appear on the exam. But the other part of the exam is the take-home, and I wanted to talk about that very briefly. So in the book, they have some melodies. If you look at your Canvas assignment, it'll give you an assignment number that has some melodies that modulate. You can take one of those melodies and you can write chords that work and made a nice modulation, and then write an accompaniment out of those chords and write a piece. Or you could do what we're doing now, write the chords first, make a melody out of that just by using the notes in the chords, and change the chords to a melody. Again, accompaniment. Again, probably one chord per measure or something like that, and use an original melody. Or you could write your own melody that you know modulates, and then you could go and adapt that by then putting chords to that like you would for an assignment. But in any event, you have to write me a little piece, might be 8 to 16 measures, that modulates. And it should have not 4-part harmony, but a nice accompaniment. Not a complicated one. Can be boo ba doo ba doo ba boo ba doo, or a hot waltz, boom ching ching, like we've been doing. And again, you could use the melody that's in the book if you don't want to write your own melody. But that's also half of your exam, and that's due Wednesday. And I'm telling you now, so some of you will do it over the weekend, so you won't be up against deadline pressure come Wednesday when you're trying to study for your exam. Okay, that's that announcement. Leslie, are you close? You want to show me something yet?
Yeah, I'm trying to send it to you right now.
Cool. I can't wait to get here.
It took me a while because I changed keys because I didn't think it was a relative key or closely related key.
Sure. Well, Leslie's is coming to me. Sophie, how are you doing? Are you understanding?
I'm getting there.
Okay. Well, I'll show you Leslie's, and that will hopefully help. It's arriving. So take me just a second to get it set up. I'll be right with you guys. Moment, I think this is Leslie's here. So she's in B flat, and she's going to the key of G minor. Is this Leslie's, right? Yes, this is the key of G minor. And she's also going to approach us with a 7 chord. The problem is that she should have sharped the G, because remember, 7 chords are leading tone chords. So in minor, we have to write a G sharp. But that's all right. It's F sharp, it would be an F sharp, A, and C. 7 chord, getting to the G minor. That's very nice. And then she goes from a 5 to a 7. So her 5 is her pivot chord, because G minor, actually, let's see, 1 second. Yeah, almost anything will work as a pivot chord, because in G minor, you have the same key signature. Here's what the problem is, though. So, guys, just to see this, she's got a minor version of 5 here, and that will work because that's in both keys. But when you do a minor version of 5, it doesn't function in the key. The real dominant chord has an F sharp. It's a D major chord, and that doesn't exist in B flat. So probably a better pivot chord. The B flat could be your pivot chord. It's a 1 chord in the key of B flat, and it's a 3 chord in the key of G minor. So this first chord is really the pivot chord. You'd normally have a phrase before you have the pivot chord. So the way we normally write this, let me just show so it's kind of clear. Instead of writing the G with a colon there, I would have written the B flat colon here, then written underneath the G colon, and then put this chord with both in it. So this is a 1 and 1 and then 3 in the other. So you create 2 lines. Let me show you what that looks like. If I get on my whiteboard. So it would look like this. Instead of writing the two things linearly, you do B flat and your first chord's a 1, and then you write underneath it G minor, and then the first chord there is a 3, and then this goes to a 5, which again is in minor than this version, and then a 7, and then a 1. Whoops. Remember, whenever you're in minor, you want your 7 to have a raised root because you want a half step, a leading tone, and you want your 5 to have the raised third and make it major so you get a leading tone. So if you want your 5 and your 7 to function, you have to sharp that. You have to take it from harmonic minor. So don't forget that step. But the real pivot chord is this 1 chord in B flat is a 3 chord in G. And we write it this way so we can see the pivot chord is the 1 chord that's in both keys. If you write it like the way that everyone else is writing it, like this, where you said B 1 and then whoops, B is the 1 and then G is the 5, then I can't see the pivot chord because there's no chord that appears to be in both keys. So you want to do the keys one on top of each other, and that way we can see where the pivot chord is. If you use the minor 5, that could be the pivot chord, but it doesn't have a lot of function in G minor, so it's stronger to pivot here and then make a major 5 with a sharp in it. Any questions on that? Questions? I can't see you.
I thought you were supposed to do the pivot chord, or like the pivot chord is the last chord, the last common chord.
Yes, it's the last common chord. So if you don't sharp the F sharp, then the 5 chord could be a pivot chord. If you don't sharp the F sharp, the 7 chord could be a pivot. But the trouble is they don't function in the new key. 7 chords, you sharp the root, and in the 5 chord, you sharp the third. If you do that, then they're no longer common chords. So the only common chord you can have is the B flat. Let me show you what I mean. I'll share it on Finale, and I'll do it without good voice leading, so that I can do it fast. So the best way to do the progression would be, sorry, let's get B flat. That was dumb. Let's get B flat major, and there we go. My first note would be, first chord's a B flat chord, and if I wanted things to function, my second chord would be D major. Be a D major chord. And then the third chord would have been F sharp diminished. And again, that's got an F sharp in it. Because those are the ones that function. There we go. And then that would take me to G minor. Without sharping these things, they don't have a dominant function. That's not a dominant chord in G minor without making it a major chord. And that's not a dominant unless you make it a leading tone chord. So you have to add the F sharps. If you add the F sharps, those aren't pivot chords because they're not in the key of B flat. So this is your pivot chord here, the first one ends up being your pivot chord. But regardless of which one, you still want, as a theorist, always want to tell the people watching which is the pivot chord. So if you wanted this to be the pivot chord, you really wanted it to be natural, which you could do. Then you want to still mark that by having the 2 lines and show that this one's the pivot chord. But it's better progression if you sharp the third of that chord and sharp the root of that chord. The leading tone should be sharped. But if you don't do it, I'll show you how you'd still notate the common chord. So if I make that a minus and that a minus, there we go. Then the way you notate it would look like this. You notate like this. You'd say it's a B flat. That's supposed to be a flat there. Flat. 1 chord to what chord is that? 3 chord to a what chord is that? A B flat to a 4 chord, 5 chord. And then you would come down here and say, okay, I'm in the key of G minor. That 5 chord is now functioning as a 7 chord going to 1. But it's actually a major version of the 7 chord. So that's the way you notate it if you do it that way. But because you don't have an F sharp here, it's not going to sound very much like a modulation because you don't have a dominant chord here. Did that make sense to everyone? Throwing a lot of words around. Okay, good. Well, we're out of time. Sophie, I know you're working on this. As you work on it, if you have questions, let me know, okay? And we'll solve them together. And just start working on that take-home part of the final so it doesn't become a last-minute mess. And I will see all of you guys on Monday. So have a great Sabbath and a wonderful weekend and get some rest, everyone. Bye-bye, all.
You too.
Bye.
Wow.